Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Project Sanity. I'm gonna have with me tonight. I'm gonna have Brandon and Dave co-hosting, but I think rather than a more traditional show, this is gonna look a lot more like a conversation uh, with post-election results and where we're going from here and what we've seen just in the first few couple days of President-elect Trump. And so I just first want to go ahead and introduce you to the folks that are going to be joining me today and bring them on screen. We've got Dave, should be there. I'm getting better at this over here. And we got Brandon Sutton up over here. And so we're going to be all talking today. And I think Brandon plans on going in. So we went ahead and tried to put a little warning, disclaimer here, let you know.
Yes, we've got the mature subject matter warnings ready to go. We've all been processing this over the last couple of days, and of course, the blame game has started up right away, and the finger pointing and what happened, and it's all going in different directions other than the direction it should be.
Oh yeah. The finger pointing is
real quickly before you get in here, Brandon. I just wanted to mention if you haven't, if we had a live takes, I don't know if Dave got much words in, but I know me and Brandon had some hot takes about right as the election results were coming in. If you want to see some of that, you can see some of that, but keep in mind that that's dealing with the trauma that is a Trump presidency. So we'll see where we've come from since then as well. So go ahead, Brandon. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I just wanted to address the finger pointing first. And it's amazing how all of the people on the quote unquote left are pointing their fingers down at poor people and to the left at Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein and whoever happens to be to the left of whatever center left position or center right position they've taken. That's the most disgusting thing, that the desire to punch down into the left. How do you want to start tonight? Because I know a lot of people are probably tired of election, coverage, and the election was 2 days ago, so I figure a lot of people, it's 48 hours later. A lot of people have had time to process the reality of a Trump presidency. I will say this: if you don't understand how this happened, you live in a bubble. If you don't understand how Trump was elected to be president of the United States of America, or someone like Trump, you have not been paying attention.
Well, I think that's Michael Moore's upshot, basically, and a lot of that, not the core of the mainstream media, but certainly, some of the folks on Morning Joe, some of them have been picking around the edges. They are all responsible for this, as far as I'm concerned, from his meteoric rise last summer, because they would answer his phone calls no matter when he called from his bedroom in his pajamas. They'd pick up the phone and talk to him, to having just hours of his empty podium waiting for his speeches, with no coverage of Bernie Sanders, and then the complete reversal of the media as soon as he got the nomination, which they were, what happened there? I don't understand. But he'll never win. So no wonder they rejected it.
But see, here's the thing. It's amazing that they felt that way. And I had to tweet back at Lee Fang yesterday.
Did you get blocked?
And I'm a big fan of Lee Fang. But I remember a month ago, and this is not the pick on Lee Fang, because Lee Fang is one of the best investigative report journalists of our time.
Absolutely.
At the moment, at The Intercept, read his work. It's lovely. But he tweeted out a month ago, and he was in, a lot of people echoed this, just like Jamel Bowie tweeted out, Trump has no chance. There's no way he's going to win. This is the media treating this like a horse race that doesn't exist. And I tweeted back at Lee Fang a month ago. It's like, oh my gosh, do you not remember that the only reason Trump got to this point is because the media portrayed him as a legitimate threat? That's how we got here. It went from Trump's not going to run to Trump is running. Trump is not going to be in the debates. Trump is in debate. He's not going to win them. He won them. He's not going to win the primaries. He won the primaries. And at no point did anyone feel like treating him like a legitimate threat. And that just shows the bubble that our media establishment lives in, this lily white upper middle class bubble that just does not have its finger on the pulse of America outside of New York City and Chicago and LA. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating a lot of things that you probably heard already. If you've been watching some of the more savvy pundits like Jordan Charlton and Kyle Kulinski and Mike Figueroa, you're probably aware of this, but he demolished Clinton in the Rust Belt. He demolished her. And the idea that he would not demolish her in the Rust Belt is, especially when she didn't go to Wisconsin. When she went to Ohio, it was for a Jay-Z concert, which, I mean, what a poor reason to go to Ohio. And the disdain that was shown, or rather the just sheer hubris that was shown by the Clinton administration. I'm sorry, the Clinton campaign in this election. It's mind-boggling. They thought they had it locked up. I can't understand why, except for the fact that they were being fed wrong information by people who had no right to be, I don't know, running their campaign.
Yeah, I think they're trying to you spur me onto several points, but on the finger pointing, I think it's been interesting to talk about where the media has been pointing the finger. If you look at a lot of the pundits, they're all, well, the pollsters. What about, how did the pollsters get this so wrong? And there's no responsibility for their responsibility towards taking what the pollsters are doing and thinking about, well, what could be wrong with these? Why might instead of dismissing out of hand the idea that Trump had support that that wasn't showing up in polling and all these things, and just dismissing it and saying, oh, he's not going to be in the debates, he's not going to be in the nominee, he's not going to do it, and so on and so forth, and not treating him as a real threat. Why? At what point? At what point? I guess. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no. Yeah, let's do that. Let's take a few minutes to dispel the myths that have been portrayed by the media establishment, your Rachel Maddows, your Chris Hayes's, your X, Y's, and Z's, over whose fault this is. One, this is not Jill Stein's fault. This is not Jill Stein's fault. This is not Bernie Sanders' fault. It is no one other candidate's job to make sure another candidate wins the election. That is not the job of someone else running. Bernie Sanders went above and beyond by advocating for her in the primary. I'm sorry if I'm seeming a little bit distracted. Someone's cat is meowing very loudly in the background.
Yeah, I was a bit distracted.
Okay, but that's fine. It is no candidate's job to ensure the election of another candidate. It wasn't Gary Johnson's job. It wasn't Jill Stein's job. It was not Bernie Sanders' job, although he went above and beyond to the point in which it made him seem like a coward.
He sacrificed some of his own support in order to lend more support to her than she was due from him. And
and especially once it came out that they had rigged the primary. And anyone who's saying the primary was not quote unquote rigged, I'm not saying he would have won it, sans the collusion between the DNC and the Clinton campaign. We can't know that. I'm not making that argument. I don't think he would have won it personally. I think Clinton's been running for going on damn near 20 years, so she had a lot of infrastructure built in. But especially when it comes to people like the Congressional Black Caucus and her ability to offer favors to people already within the establishment, I don't know if he would have won. But if you're saying there was no collusion and that did not affect the outcome, then either you're dishonest or you're delusional.
Yeah, and so one problem that people have with the whole "it was rigged" is they're reading into the word "rigged," like you say, that he would have won if she didn't. That's not what the word "rigged" means. It means that they intentionally slanted it in her favor. That's all it takes in order to be rigged. You don't have to win you can lose a rigged game.
You can. You can cheat on a test and still get a C. Like, doesn't mean you didn't cheat, and you will still get punished. It just means you didn't do it very well. And she didn't even read the primary very well because she barely. No, she won it fairly. I mean, by a fairly large margin. 2, it is not the voters' fault whether you went out and voted or whether you did not go out and vote. It is not your fault. It is not the voters' job to ensure that a candidate wins. That it was not our job to be with her. It was her job to be with us. That was how entitled and privileged her campaign was. That her slogan was, "The people should come to me," and that was the crux of her campaign. I'm with her. Why wouldn't I want to be with her? Like, you should be with me, man. I'm not coming to anybody. Not only is she not rhetorically go to anybody, she barely physically went to anybody.
Well, and also, it looks like only 19% millennials came out to vote, is what it's looking like, where 52% of millennials came out and voted for Obama. The same with Hispanic vote.
She felt entitled to all of those demographics, and if you look down the line, she underperformed in all of those demographics, each and every one of them. And it's not because they weren't. It's not our job to be sycophantically fawning over her and supporting her. She's supposed to come and win our vote, As much as I disagreed with Elon James, he had the earn this vote or lose, and I think that is what she failed to do. She failed to earn those votes.
She failed to feel the need to earn those votes. And this goes again back to my original point about the media crippling her. The media, by refusing to hold her accountable for not going out, prevented her from being able to understand why she should go out. The media establishment holds a large blame in this, both by elevating Trump and by keeping Clinton's feet out of the fire in the short term, under the theoretical desire to keep put her feet in the fire once she won. Like, what the fuck what the hell does that mean?
There's one.
Sorry, I'll put $1 in the swear jar. You know what? Do you know what being held accountable in a democratic election looks like in a democratic country? It means you lose.
Yeah.
That's why you don't hold someone accountable after. Because if you don't hold them if the media does not hold them accountable, the people will. Apparently, although she won the popular vote, let's be fair.
Barely, and the count's not in yet. And okay, yes, all right, yes. Then this whole smooth transition to power is such malarkey, such a big fazool. I mean, freaking Obama was there. You know, he can't get the nuclear codes. He's da 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 da. He's Hitler. Yeah, and then he sits there and freaking shakes the guy's hand, and now everybody's in the freaking streets, and the media's got him up like a freaking sports channel. Every fucking channel, every city, it's up there. Did they do that during the Iraq War? Did they do that when we've got fucking when it got stolen from us in the primary?
No, but here's the thing: the liberal establishment is so intellectually dishonest. They spent the entire past 6 months fear-mongering Donald Trump. And now people like Sean King are getting up there, and every tweet he has is, look how afraid everyone is. I don't understand why everyone's so... look at the fear he caused. Like, no, this is not the fear Donald Trump caused. This is the fear of Donald Trump that you use to try to elevate Clinton. Donald Trump didn't make people afraid of him simply by his message.
That's right.
You made people afraid of him by the way you presented his message, which was undoubtedly awful. But now we have 7-year-olds who were not listening to Donald Trump. They were listening to Clinton. That's why those 7-year-olds are afraid. They were not listening to Donald Trump's rallies. They were watching those scary ass commercials that showed children watching a Donald Trump rally. Like, I don't know what children were doing that. And like repeating the words. It's like, come on, dude.
And this is exactly the point I was making with Richard earlier is they've got literally everything he's ever said on tape. Because he's never held back, and he sat down, he would tell anybody what he believes. If you sat Bill Clinton down and put everything he ever said on tape, believe me, you have plenty of freaking commercials you could just run of stuff that he says or what any of these people say.
But let's go back to
Donald Trump never ran the "Make America Great Again" coming out of Bill Clinton's mouth.
Right.
But let's go back to the notion of Bernie. And I think that's really the sad part, because Bernie went out there and he campaigned, and he put his own, I would hope that his own pride is a little bit hurt by having to campaign for someone like Hillary Clinton. I would hope that his pride and his self-worth went down a little bit, because I love Bernie Sanders. He looks like my Jewish grandfather, who I don't have. But I live in Brooklyn, so I know a lot of people like Bernie Sanders. I'm sorry if that comes across as, being a little offensive, but I live in Brooklyn. I know a lot of Bernie Sanderses, and he's still going to get the blame. At the end of the day, you still have people coming out and blaming Bernie Sanders. You still have people going, Bernie bros are what cost Hillary this election. It's like, are you serious? First of all, that's intellectually dishonest. And second of all, it's not true, either logistically or foundationally, about what democracy is about. And you have people like Rachel Maddow getting on air and failing at basic math.
Yeah, like let's take a minute just to remind everyone. It's like she would have lost to Romney,
right?
Like, there's no reason that Romney would have gotten less votes this election than he got in 2012, and no reason she would have gotten more out of being up against Romney than she got out of being up against Trump. So,
well, there's a tweet I'm just putting up right now. Wendy Muse tweeted this out, and Jordan over at TYT picked it up. And if you look at the actual numbers from some of the other states, it looks like Clinton would have lost 7 more states if Gary Johnson wasn't running. So, this whole idea that Yeah, she would have been. Yeah, he would have gotten 400 electoral votes.
Yeah, he would have surpassed Reagan's record. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Clinton's loss was a devastating condemnation about how much of America hates neoliberal politics, how much of America hates neoconservative politics, how much of America desires any kind of, even the hints of populism, even the hints of anti-establishmentarianism, any kind of anti-establishment. That's not what that word means. Any hint of an anti-establishment agenda will win you the election, and that shows you how much Americans dislike the establishment. And the problem the Democratic Party had, one of the many problems, is that once they closed off the legitimate discourse surrounding leftist populism, they opened the channels for right-wing populism, because that was all that was left off. And that's not to say that Bernie supporters went to Trump, because they didn't. A lot of them just stayed home. The DNC spent 8 months suppressing the vote.
And courting Republicans.
Well, and let's always remember that a lot of Bernie supporters weren't in either party before this election.
That's right.
So
I wasn't.
To try and force all of even Bernie supporters, let alone the people that ended up where Jill Stein was, that they would have voted Hillary if they had a binary choice.
Rich? What, Rich? You mean simply by nature of being the Democratic nominee, she doesn't get your vote? Irrespective of what she's done in the past and what she will do in the future? Are you implying that you don't want to vote out of fear or obligation to somebody, to an amorphous entity with no real goal? Are they what are you, a socialist, a Russian?
Clearly a Russian. Yeah, the Russians. It's the Russians apparently that did this, Comey and the Russians. And amazingly that 60 million Republicans voted for a Russian spy to be president of the United States. But besides that, let's get beyond the blame. We're going to be pointing figures. The blame is going on. It's already happened. We know the score. They're still going to point it at us. Is the Democratic Party going to change? Is it Dem exit? Start something else, the Progressive Party, or is it ripe for a Democratic takeover?
Well, we saw today from Howard Dean, which I think could not have been blessed by Hillary Clinton in their campaign.
Blocked. Progressive Army blocked. Howard Dean blocked by, or Progressive Army blocked by Howard Dean.
There's no way that he's good. Before our audience probably knows, but he's trying to run for the head of the DNC. And so, and he did it right after Keith Ellison said, and
that
Bernie
he was going to, and Bernie Sanders came out.
Yeah.
That's right.
So essentially, what you have is you have the Hillary Clinton campaign's press announcement from Dean, and then you have Bernie Sanders getting behind Keith Ellison. That is the fight for the new Democratic Party.
And you have a theory. You have a theory that they're going to run her again.
That would be. No one is that stupid.
You would think so, right?
They just elected Trump.
I would have thought that before they picked Tim Kaine to be the vice presidential nominee, that no one would be that stupid. But that's not stupidity at a certain point. That's just hubris.
Just throw another white conservative
she may not
on
actually be running on the top. In her concession speech, it did sound like she sounded like a fighter after losing their belt, in that, she was like, somebody else is going to take this on. I'm kind of done with this. But I think it didn't take long for her to realize that a lot of her success and wealth is dependent on her, or at least a lot of people perceive it as dependent on her political influence. And if she just
Clinton's a toxic brand. Clinton is a toxic brand now. Clinton.
That's what I want to believe. But Dean shows you that they're not done. Dean shows you that they're not done.
Clinton was a toxic brand to the populace prior to this election, which is why she lost and couldn't mobilize anybody, just irrespective of the way the mishandling of her campaign. But now Clinton is a toxic brand to the donor class, because this is twice in a row. Once you lost to a black man, and this time you lost to a reality TV show star. So I would be surprised if the Clinton Foundation is going to be pulling in a lot of money from now on. This seems like a toxic brand now. I
see her clawing on. How do you think she gets out of this? How does she exculpate herself from being a political entity? Because she doesn't, like, professionally. She was a lawyer. I know Bill can't go back to practicing law, at least not in Arkansas. And So I don't know, like where do they go if they're not political, if they aren't a political
One of
brand,
one
and
of their many
what does that mean
mansions.
to her if she, she's got 40 years worth of secrets on every main or every establishment politician out there. So
Clinton,
and if she's got nothing to lose, what does that mean? Go ahead.
Clintons are going to be fine. I mean, they still have influence to sell. They still have favors that they can give out. But I don't think that they're going to be able to hold that kind of that sort of public America's favorite family anymore, because this was an embarrassing defeat. She should be embarrassed. She should be embarrassed by how she lost to Donald Trump. She lost Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio handily, in Pennsylvania.
Well, and
This was
I think Dean that's her move. Is like Dean is her move to stay relevant in that Dean was obviously under her thumb when he's, basically blew off all the people that were telling him to support or to vote the same way that the people of his state voted. Said, no, that's not what super delegates are for. My contention being that you got to be a super delegate by either being elected or by working for the party who's supposed to work for the people who elect the members. So yes, you do owe the constituents and and not just nationally, also locally. But anyway, plant him there. Then she says she controls this new progressive movement, which is taking over
no,
the Democratic move.
We can't.
That's what she wants.
Yeah, but I don't. I want to believe better of America. And see, this is why I'm not too put out by Donald Trump winning. A lot of people are sort of embodying that apocalyptic mentality because they figure that they kind of have short-term goals, rather they're short-sighted. But see, I always felt that I didn't want him to win. I expected Clinton to win. I was reading the polls too, but apparently they were being conducted by people who don't know what they're doing, who were oversampling from the East Coast or whatever they were doing. I can't even imagine. Nate Silver should be shut down. Nate Silver needs to go home.
The fundamental I think it was on not pardon the interruption, or not pardon the interruption. one of the shows, there was a pollster on there, and I think he nailed it. Is the fundamental problem with their modeling was that they were assuming a 2012 electorate and similar breaking of that electorate, and what they got was not quite that. It was the same it looked demographically like the same electorate, but the part of that demographic that each person was bringing out was different. So while white people were only 70%, not 72% of the electorate, the 70% of white people that showed up, 54% of the white women voted for Trump.
Oh yeah,
that was not in any of Clinton's Clamp's prediction. Is losing white women to Trump, or without college education and belief. Sorry, go ahead.
Can we also stop doing that now? Can we stop talking about how Clinton didn't get 100% of the black vote? Clinton couldn't even win the people who look like her. Yeah. Clinton could not win the majority of people who look like her. So why are we somehow trying to scapegoat minorities?
53% of white women voted for her.
Yeah. Wait, 53% of white women voted for Trump, didn't they?
It was white women without college education.
Sorry, Trump. That's what I meant.
Statistic. But yeah,
Trump.
Like, she barely won overall, I think, for we go ahead. So go ahead.
No, but my point is that this notion that it's everyone's job, especially the poor and the minorities, to vote for the Democrats is so problematic, because ultimately what you do is you have upper middle class white pundits going on air cajoling poor people and minorities for somehow voting out of their own interests, as though they don't understand that the neoliberal agenda is not within their interest. The Clinton
Charles Blow got a lot of static on Don Lemon's show last night, and he also got some from our general vicinity as well, for some of the things he said. But I think he did a decent job there, where basically you could tell there was a lot of white commentators there, and they were getting nervous that he was getting upset about the ideas that they were pushing around, trying to shift blame towards the poor and communities of color. And so I know he got some static, so I want to give him credit for what I saw there. Maybe not everybody agrees with me, but
actually, here's what I want to say, because I know you're probably gonna hear this from any of the other hosts on Progressive Army, not to their discredit, because everyone in Progressive Army is incredibly smart, incredibly capable. But I'm gonna say something a bit different. I feel really bad for poor white people right now. I've been saying that since the primary began. I've been saying that since West Virginia occurred, because the Democratic Party has functionally abandoned the poor white vote. And not only did they abandon the poor white people to stuff like NAFTA and the TPP and the Rust Belt and whatever is going on. I mean, not whatever's going on, whatever their agenda is that is not really interested. They don't pander to them like the way they pander to minorities. They don't like they do. Like I didn't see when Clinton went to Ohio. When Clinton went to the Rust Belt, she didn't visit a factory. She visited a Jay-Z concert to help pander to minorities, as opposed to going to one of the many post-industrial towns across Ohio that I went to school in, one of a post-industrial town across Ohio where the factory had just been shut down.
And where did Trump go?
And now
Trump was at a
upper middle. Huh?
Trump was at a. Where did Trump go? Trump went to a factory floor, and basically said, like Michael Moore said, he spoke to those people. She couldn't have been bothered.
Because it's long been the strategy of the Democratic Party to scapegoat poor white people and shame them as a method, as a strategy for securing the minority vote, and also for absolving themselves of their own racist policies. It's long been a strategy of the Democratic Party, and not necessarily the establishment, but just the liberal elite, middle class Long Island or East Coast Democrat liberal, to pretend as though racism is something that occurs in the South and only the South.
Yeah, it's just the poor white people thing, and some rich white people aren't racist.
And some of my favorite white people are poor. I would say I have experienced more racism from East Coast elites, more casual racism, more sort of implicit racism while living in urban centers or going to schools in urban centers than I have from people in the South. I hate to say it, but it's long been their strategy to scapegoat poor white people as the only type of racist, so that they can get away with their own unique brand of racism, which is neoliberal policies, neoconservative policies, expanding the military industrial complex, the prison industrial complex, all of these things, while simultaneously going to Jay-Z concerts and pretending as though that is the way you truly engage with black people, with the black voter. And and black people I'm sorry, and I hate with saying black people, we give away our vote. We are prone to giving away our vote to the Democratic Party because they
well, we took 40 years of we'll take the best we can get, and that was always going to be that was pretty much always the Democratic candidate since the Southern strategy, more or less. So we just accepted, okay, well, these, one group wants to lynch us and the other one wants to, whatever, just say mean things and not give us a job or whatever.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's really the problematic part of this whole thing, that I've calmed down now after my initial outrage. I apologize. Anyway, but that's the problematic thing about this whole sort of Clinton fiasco, is that we have upper middle class white people getting on whatever platform they have, talking about how could minorities do this to themselves, how could poor white people do this to minorities. How am I supposed to explain to my upper middle class white daughter that her life is functionally not going to be any different than it ever was? And I don't care. Are you serious? I don't care. I don't care how $125,000 a year lawyer or political pundit explains to their daughter before she goes to private school that she is only going to get 95% of everything in the world that she wants, but she still can't be president of the United States of America. Now, that might sound churlish and not disrespectful, but as though I'm disregarding the fact that the structures of sexism. This is just one example of that. Oh yeah, and one more thing.
Here's the one thing: is if people felt that way, that's exactly how people feel when they don't really agree with Trump's racism, but they're at the point where if I believe this and this about the economy or social laws or whatever, he's my best option, so I have to vote for him.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem too. I keep using a lot of gesticulation. Here's the problem too. If the Democratic Party over the past 30 years between Obama and Clinton had offered any solution for sexism and racism and Islamophobia in America, he would not have won. It's that is the Democrats have no solution for the structural causes for these problems. All they have is bullshit pandering and you can and all of this, all they have is bullshit pandering to minorities. And the reason I'm not so broken about Trump winning this time, because in my head, in my heart, I know if Trump didn't win this time, 4 years from now, we would be getting Ted Cruz, 100%. Like there's not a doubt in my head. Or worse than Ted Cruz, who the literal devil. You think Satan was gonna rise from the underworld to come run for a Republican Party?
Yeah, it's a short list. We do have Lauren Steiner joining us, and I'm not sure how much she was able to catch our previous conversation, but Dave, go ahead and bring her in. And
hey, Lauren, can you hear us? Unmute yourself and say hey.
Am I muted?
Oh, there you are. Hey, Lauren, how are you?
I'm good. I was on a conference call, so I didn't hear what you talked about. Did you talk about who the media are blaming or how they seem so befuddled? Or...
Oh, yeah, we did. And it turns out that it's everyone's fault but the media. Can you believe that? Can you believe that
everyone but the media and Hillary Clinton?
It's literally everyone's fault that Hillary Clinton did not win, except the people who elevated Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, who didn't campaign for herself.
And did have that WikiLeaks email that said that she was also trying to elevate Donald Trump. So
it's crazy. It's crazy how that works.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I just wanted to say that I watched an amazing video today, Jordan Chariton, and it's on the Young Turks, called Media's Elitism and Ignorance Post-Election. And he just did the most amazing job giving voice to the fact that that the media, it's an incestuous club. They all hang with the same people they cover, the politicians, the pundits, the staffers. They make the same amount of money. They go to the same cocktail parties. They send their kids to the same private schools. And he was crediting one reporter who I actually met along the campaign trail, Yamiche Alcindor, who's a young African-American woman who writes for the New York Times. She covered the Sanders campaign. She actually said on a show that he was watching, well, maybe we should be, going into the heartland of the country and finding out what real people think. And she said that so seriously, as opposed to ironically. And it's just, staggering to me. And then Rachel Maddow, who I have not watched since the middle of the primaries, because she was the worst in terms of disparaging Bernie Sanders and elevating, to use that word, Hillary Clinton. I cannot stand to see her face or hear her voice. And she used to be one of my favorites. I feel she's given a lot of voice to issues, whether it's the situation with the emergency managers in Michigan or the radioactive waste sleeves in North Dakota. She's done some very good investigative reporting and bringing light to the issues that are important to me. But on the presidential election, she was so out of it. And she apparently, because Claudia Stauber felt the need today from Cabin Talk to do a video to her Facebook Live, viewers, showing the statistics. And I actually sent Dave the chart that she posted in her Facebook page, showing that, the Stein vote, as you know, is less than 1%. And the Gary Johnson vote was about 2%. But even the article that people are citing all over the internet, like Wonkette, another one that was so pro-Hillary, and the Maddow blog, they are saying that if you take the Stein voters and half the Johnson voters, then Hillary would have won. And I had to comment on this Wonkette. The other one I couldn't comment on for some reason. Are you crazy? Do you not understand that the Johnson voters are libertarians and they align with Republicans, not Democrats? And if they were going to take away votes at all, they'd be taking them away from Trump. So let me just point out one thing. So as Claudia points out, there's literally 4 states. And if you can get that chart up there, you can see what I'm talking about. There's 4 states that Trump would have won had Johnson been not in the race.
But see,
this is good to have the numbers. We mentioned it a little bit. Go ahead.
This is part of a larger problem with the not just media establishment, but with white privilege and just elite privilege. They look at that framing. If you just take the votes,
Yeah.
Like if we just give the votes to the person we want to win, she wins. Yes, that truly
Yeah,
is
we could take a million of Trump's votes too, you
Yeah,
know?
like, if we just take what we want, if people just do what we want, we win. So I don't understand why people just don't do what we want. And I watched that video by Jordan Charlton, at least half of it. It's 22 minutes long. It's a great video, and I agree. But I want to expand. It's not simply that the media establishment is incestuous. It's that America, from a racial and economic standpoint, is incestuous, because these people in the media are not simply just hanging out with each other. It's not simply the people at Vox, people from BuzzFeed. It's that the media establishment, and not only their MSNBCs and your Fox Newses, but also your Voxes, your Daily Beasts, your Slates, your Salons, your Jezebels are populated by the same people. Not exactly, but the same upper middle class white people who could afford to get into journalism. The same upper middle class Lena Dunham watching white people who do not understand the priorities of the majority of America, much less the fact that their version of reality is not the dominant one for everyone. That it's not that they feel as though they are capable of defining the agenda of the rest of the world, and even the framing of the way people voting against their own interests. What makes you qualified to tell people what their interests are? Like,
Yeah,
what
I
makes
think
you
one thing that, like,
qualified?
it's easy to, like, I think it would be easy to take that as a slight necessarily towards the individuals at these organizations, but I don't necessarily think it's any one of those individuals' faults that they're not able to see everybody's problems
Oh, yeah,
and see things from everybody's
it's
perspective.
Well,
The problem is that
it's
we
not
should
it's
know
not
that organizations need
it's
to be more diverse, and we
yeah
should hold them accountable
it's
to
not
have
always
a more
malicious.
diverse staff
It's
and
not
more diverse. Go ahead, Brandon.
It's
Sorry,
that
and
it's
then we'll.
definitely not. I don't mean to imply it's malicious. This is
Yeah.
not. This is not entirely malicious, and I think a lot of people sort of they take this with the Chris Hedges mentality of, oh, they were actively manufacturing consent. It's like, no, a lot of people are just myopic. A lot of these people just are unable to think out of their own bubble because they don't have to, because the world, which is literally them, or the hegemonic, the dominant narrative tells them that they are the world, and that if you don't come to them, if you're not with her, you're simply wrong.
And
Well,
anybody's susceptible to getting to that point. You have to be conscious about avoiding it. Go ahead, Lauren, get in here.
I was just going to say that a very good friend of mine from college, who started out as a Bernie Sanders supporter because she has 3 millennial-age children, eventually switched over to Hillary, and it became a matter of, the entitlement. It's her turn. We want a woman in office. And my friend is an executive coach. That's what she does for a living. And she's very affluent. Her husband probably makes $1 million a year as a lawyer, so she doesn't even have to work. And yet she feels that because, this is her second husband. Before, when she was divorced, her previous husband didn't pay her any child support, and she had to go back to work. But what she doesn't understand is that her parents paid for her house. They bought her the house that she was living in. They paid off the mortgage. I mean, how many people? That's like Donald Trump said he got a small loan from his father of $1 million. These people have no perspective. But today I had to, send her an email, just basically after I saw Jordan's video. I said, I have to apologize to you because you have no way of understanding how most people live because you only watch the mainstream media. You don't understand that 49% of Americans do not have $350 in the bank to pay for a car repair. That 7% of Americans are just one accident, job loss, illness away from dire poverty. You just don't understand that. So it's easy for you to be into the lean in Sheryl Sandberg kind of feminism, that Hillary Clinton represents, but you don't seem to understand that it's her policies. Like, I love when people talk about, they just give the Hillary Clinton talking point. She spent her whole life working on behalf of women and girls. They say that as if it's a mantra. And I, of course, throw out, the welfare reform bill that threw millions of women and girls into dire poverty, NAFTA that outsourced, high-paying jobs for people without college educations, putting them into service, minimum wage jobs, or even when she was on the board of Walmart and she sat silent while that corporation squashed, the union efforts of the workers, forcing many of them to be on public assistance, and most of them being single mothers, or even mass incarceration that sent off so many mothers to jail for nonviolent drug offenses, having their children grow up homeless, and capping it off with her wars that caused, women and girls to be, displaced, maimed, and killed. And, nobody ever writes back to that because, what are they going to say? She spent, and then the script.
But the Child Defense Fund, which
Yeah.
if it's like, but do you ask the people that work with her or that experience these wonderful experiences what their take on it is like, because if they're not working for her campaign and usually getting paid to do it, they usually have a different version of how it went than what the way it gets described by her in the media.
Oh, absolutely. And she never talks about the fact that her mentor, Marian Wright Edelman from the Children's Defense Fund, took issue with her over this. And her husband, Peter Edelman, actually resigned from his position in the Health and Human Services Department over this. He worked for Clinton. And the other thing, she's always taking credit for the script, the Children's Health Insurance Program, which someone told me was a Ted Kennedy program. It was his bill, and he always resented the fact that she took credit for it. So that's the thing.
And then on top of that, there's the 9/11 bill, which she probably claimed, ownership over. And then when it was up for renewal, she could only be found for some quick little quote in an obscure paper, and that was it. And meanwhile, Jon Stewart and the people that are dying as a result of the bill possibly or not getting renewed are out there knocking doors and actually talking to people, and she was busy doing other things.
But here's the other thing that
it's a long-standing pattern. So I just wanted to say quickly that that's. The people think that that a lot of us are just haters on Hillary and stuff like that. It's like, no, we've done the research. We've thought these things through, and we've come to these conclusions as a result of a rational interpretation. Get in there, Brandon.
Clinton has been bad on issues of race since she was the first lady of Arkansas, though. It's like this is revisionist history. This notion that she went from bad to good or good to bad. Clinton has shown no real growth over these 30 years, and I think that's one of the most problematic aspects of her. There's evidence of her being racially divisive when it came to teachers' unions in Arkansas back when she was the first lady there. There are things that are deep in her past that people ignored in order to promote her and did everyone a disservice. The media ignored her flaws in order to, misguided attempt to get her elected, and all ignoring her flaws did publicly was make people distrust her more.
Well, the trust is a huge key one, and we saw it in the last few polls right before the election, where we knew already that the media was not very trusted. Hillary Clinton's trust eroded further over the campaign as a result of the emails and a variety and the description that you gave about people defending her and so on and so forth. And so what you ended up with in the last few weeks is Trump was between Hillary Clinton, the media, and Donald Trump. People trusted Donald Trump more. That's what. Go ahead. Get in there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I've been thinking about this for the last 2 days, and really, what was it about? And I think there were two things, and they were two separate things, both of which Bernie Sanders would have won on. And that is that this was an election that was both anti-establishment and populist. So as far as anti-establishment, Cenk Uygur calls them the brick voters, the people that just want to throw a brick into the whole thing, and they're not even really thinking about issues. They just want to throw the bums out, and they're looking to someone like, it could have been Bernie. Even though Bernie's been, ironically, even though Bernie's been in the Congress for 25 years, he's never fit in.
The primary did a great example of showing that the establishment was plenty not friendly to him.
Right. And even Barney Frank, when I argued with him at the DNC, he told me that Bernie, he even had to minimize the thing that Bernie is known for, being the amendment king. He said, those amendments were insignificant. They didn't have, they weren't about anything policy-wise. And then I said, well, what about the pulpit? What about, the role of a senator just using his office to get the issues out? And he says, that's really great, but we would have loved to help him in our fights. It's great that it's too bad that he only became a Democrat in the last year. Where was he all those other years when we needed him? And of course, where he was caucusing with the Democrats. So I don't even know why he's
trying to drag them to the reasonable position.
Yeah, but I was looking at some other videos today, and the populism, I really do think, is probably more of a factor than the racism that drew people to Trump. Because I was actually
absolutely, and it's
I was-
really it's incredibly counterproductive. I just really want to say this quickly: is that it's incredibly counterproductive to put it all on racism. I think a lot of people turned a blind eye towards racism, and when people hear racist, they think KKK, burning effigies, front yard, hanging people from trees. But
I do want to talk about.
We're talking about institutionalized racism, and that played a role in why people were, and institutionalized misogyny and all those things. Why people were able to look past a lot of Trump's flaws.
I do
and be a brick thrower or whatever. Maybe get in there, Brandon, quickly, and then we'll get back to you, Lauren. Sorry.
Oh, let Lauren finish first.
Okay, yeah, sorry, Lauren, go ahead and finish.
Well, no, it was a different point I was going to segue into. So why don't you go?
Well, I mean, I think it is worth addressing this notion of, because we see a lot of people, whether it's Van Jones calling this election of like Trump's win as white lash to Obama, or people sort of trying to scapegoat sexism and misogyny, and that's why she lost. And I mean, there is truth in that, but it's meant to but what they're trying to do is they're trying to obscure a larger point, which is that on a personal level, she was a bad candidate. The idea that she was not a bad candidate is only in the heads of those liberal elite who for whom her policies never really affected, and the people who just can't seem to understand why someone might have a problem with someone who wants to have a no-fly zone in Syria, or continue an illegal drone program, or expand an illegal drone program, or deregulate Wall Street. These people are so solipsistic in their thinking, and also so prone to just I don't know what so prone to a very shallow version of liberalism that as long as you're not saying bad words, you're not racist to them. And to say Clinton lost because of sexism is basically to say it's akin to saying OJ was arrested because of racism. It's trying to it absolves someone of their personal sins because of the existence of structural inequality, and we can't do that. We can't subscribe to that mentality for anything because it's a very, very poor one.
And it's dangerous to actually impacting the change that we want, because it undermines the legitimate grievances that we do have. Go ahead, Lauren.
And it's not even true. It's not even true, because she, first of all, she only got like 55% of the women's vote, apparently, and she only got 71% of the Hispanic vote and 88% of the Black vote. But this was all way less than Obama got. So she didn't even hold the Obama voters because she was such a bad candidate.
And I think that she also got a lot of, particularly in or she got a lot of white women's support, particularly because I think after 9 months of hearing about all of the badness of Trump and how grotesque he was towards women, they started to put together, and meanwhile they're sitting in Republican households, their husband may be Republican or whatever, maybe sometimes they vote Democrat, sometimes they vote Republican as a woman in the house, and they're looking around at the men they knew in their lives, and Trump wasn't all that different from the men that they knew in their lives. And so like every attack on Trump was an attack on their husband, their brother, their uncle, there's somebody that they knew. And so every time that, oh, Trump said that, how we can't possibly have is like, well, my brother says that all the time, or does or whatever.
But see, even I don't think that's fair, because what happened, the Democrats blew their wad too early in this, because everything Bernie Sanders did was sexist. Literally he yelled at her, that's sexist. The most sexist thing Bernie Sanders did, the most patronizing thing Bernie Sanders did to Hillary Clinton, was not come at her with both barrels. That was the most patronizing thing that anyone did. And that's really, I mean, it becomes a larger question of, sexism and misogyny. But under my estimation, the most patronizing thing that he did was not come at her with everything as though she were too fragile to take it. Hillary Clinton was not too fragile for you to question her on her problematic racial rhetoric, her problematic welfare reform, like the money she takes from the prison industrial complex, her role in exporting fracking overseas, all of these things that she's done. That is everyone who's accusing, and I hate to be like, no, you, but all of the media who's accusing everyone else of being sexist. Maybe have you ever considered the sexist thing is not holding her accountable, as though she can't, as though maybe the most sexist thing you can do is the petty bigotry of low expectations. Accept the narrative that, she simply didn't understand how emails work. This is that kind of liberal sexism, this sort of very lazy, casual sexism, where it's like, I can't believe people would speak to her that way. It's like, why? She's an adult. She can take it. Like, yeah,
And
like,
you know, we did a lot of pointing and blame, and hopefully, I think we're moving in a good direction. But I just wanted to say that I'm ready to take responsibility for my role in that I could have worked a bit harder. Like, I mean, I felt like I tried really hard, made thousands of phone calls for Bernie, showed up to lots of meetings, knocked doors, did everything I thought I could. But I know I could have worked harder for Bernie, and
I
Oh,
maybe
no,
that
no, no, no,
might
no.
not have made a difference. But
Let,
it might not have made a difference. But I'm willing to take at least a share of the responsibility, my
no,
share,
no,
my fair
no,
share.
no. Let me just tell you, as a Bernie, as this is what I was going to segue into, as a Bernie delegate.
Perfect.
You know, we've been posting today, and I've been sharing fellow delegates' videos from the convention, and these were videos of, you know, us shouting out in the convention hall, Sanders beats Trump, Sanders beats Trump. My friend Alexis Edelstein, fellow delegate from California CD 33, holding up the chart, the map that was published in Real Clear Politics, which is almost identical to the map from 2 days ago, showing what would happen if it was a matchup between Hillary and Trump. Only actually Trump did better than that map. And my friend Bobby Scheer, who's the delegate from Humboldt County, quickly in 1 week tried to get as many delegates and Rules Committee members and Platform Committee members as he could to sign this statement, basically begging the DNC and the super delegates. They still had time to change their minds and you know, and vote for Bernie. And we were really trying to do that. And I don't know if you're familiar with either of my articles, but you know, when I saw Bernie on C-SPAN after the Washington, D.C. loss, and he said something that he said before, I can do arithmetic, you know, and then talking about how he wanted to be chair of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee back in the Senate, I got a sense that, you know, he was going to give up and he wasn't going to take it all the way to the convention. And then sure enough, the next day I read in Politico that Tad Devine was quoted as saying he was not going to send the letter that he planned to send to all the superdelegates, making the case that he had a better chance of beating Trump. And, you know, I wrote a letter to him. The LA Progressive published it with the title, Bernie, Don't Do It, meaning don't endorse her. You know, let us go and fight for you at the convention like you said we would. And then, you know, prior to that, after that, I wrote an article called Beyond the Booing, a Sanders Delegate Reflects on the Convention, basically talking about how he gave us nothing to do there. We couldn't try to lobby the superdelegates because he already conceded. He did not submit his minority reports on the platform, so we couldn't fight for those. And then he also did not, you know, he said, we're not going to do the platform because we're going to save our powder for a floor fight on the Rules Committee about the superdelegates. And then I, you know, snuck into the Rules Committee meeting 2 days before the convention started, in which, you know, he basically conceded. They came up with this bullshit Unity Reform Commission, which is non-binding and non-mandatory and stacked with Hillary and DNC appointees. And he conceded to that. And so it basically left us nothing. You know, we weren't given any direction by his campaign about what we were supposed to do there. And most of us spent a lot of money. You know, in our case, we had to stay in a $700 a night room for 4 nights minimum. And all we had to do was, you know, protest and try to, you know, make this be something other than the TV coronation that they had expected it to be. So let me just close. My point is that I was starting to blame Bernie today even a little bit more because he did know this, and I feel like he should have fought for us. He should have fought for us. And I don't care if it meant that he'd be ostracized when he went back to the Senate. He could have taken Jill Stein's offer to run with him on the Green Party ticket. I think he would have won. You know, he should have challenged the election fraud. You know, when Jane Sanders was asked about that, she said, we didn't want to be perceived as sore losers. You know, these are all very stupid reasons, you know, or be perceived as a Ralph Nader, as a spoiler. I mean, all of this is about him, his ego. He should have fought for the revolution, and he did not. He started it, and then he didn't finish it.
Well, like, you actually made the point that I wanted to make, and you made it much more eloquently than I could have. But the other part of that was because I know if I was Bernie, the thing I would turn him around and do is say, and you didn't come out. Like you guys knew I was the best shot. I did everything I could to tell you I was the best shot, and not enough of you came out and beat us, or it was enough to overcome whatever Hillary was going to do dirty trick wise. But
Well, I mean,
and that's why I don't want it. I think I want to move past blaming, but this is important that we get all this out there so that people don't come away with the wrong impression about.
You don't need to move past blame. This is
Yeah.
still fresh. The wound's still fresh. And I will say this: I'm against that argument. I don't think you need to make the argument that he's the best person to win against another person. That's not how I want my democracy to work. I want him to make the argument that he's the best candidate for the left. I want him to make the argument that, you know what, I represent the will of the people more than this corporate candidate. And that's why I should, irrespective of whether or not I can beat Trump, I represent this party's interests. I represent this party's base. I am the voice of this party. And that is why I should be the candidate.
He did that. He did that the whole entire primary season.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he worked his butt off, and I think he obviously outworked Hillary.
At a certain point, so Hillary had no ground game. At a certain point, he succumbed to cowardice. And that, regardless of what anyone else say, I think I love his politics, but he was frightened away from making a more compelling case for himself, and that is not attractive in a leader either. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of, I mean, it's not as unattractive as what we saw in Hillary Clinton, of course, but there is like that level of cowardice where you could not make a more forceful cry for yourself of the way you were treated. Makes me wonder, like, at the end of the day, were you the right candidate for this? Did you really deserve to be the head of this revolution? Because you didn't just martyr yourself for your ego. You didn't just, play, I'm going to keep things high. And, because I don't want to succumb to these dirty politics, even while she's calling you a sexist and a misogynist and calling not just you, but all of your supporters sexist.
Bernie bros.
Bernie bros. At a certain point, all your supporters are white males. Like how misgendering is that? Like, how sexist is that to say that if you sell, that's a type of sexism as well.
Or sending surrogates like what's her name, Madeleine Albright and Gloria Steinem to say that the women are for Bernie because that's where the boys are.
Absolutely.
She knew every surrogate that she had, whether it was Claire McCaskill. And we can see now in these Podesta emails that they were very aware of what was being said in their name. And they were writing the tweets and they were reviewing the articles that were published in the mainstream media. And they were getting the debate questions. And there was one thing that, caused me to be concerned because it said, Bernie said this, I forget what it was he was attacking her on. And they said that violates the agreement. So I'm like, oh my God. And I post this on my Facebook, smoking gun, ? Did Bernie have an agreement with the Clinton campaign? And of course, people were responding, no, that's just his, thing that he's never run a negative campaign. And maybe they had a verbal agreement that they wouldn't go negative on each other. It's a little bit different than.
Well, someone broke that agreement. Someone broke that agreement, and it wasn't Bernie Sanders, but he, at the end of the day, he martyred us. He martyred America. Like, the Clintons bet the farm on her ability to beat Trump. God knows why they would do that. But Bernie Sanders, at a certain point, he let his cowardice make him step away from what could have been his moment, and he martyred us all. He martyred us all for his. He wasn't just fighting for him. But at a certain point, that's why he gave up.
He started, but when I met him the second time, the first time I met him in April of 2011, I asked him to challenge Obama in the primary, and he said no. And that's because Bernie's a team player. He would never challenge a sitting duck as a lame duck, an incumbent president.
I think they're kind of all the same.
Yeah. And then, when I met him in October of 2014, I asked him if he would run as an independent and lead a movement, not just a campaign. And he said he'd heard that before and he was considering it. And we know that PDA was working on him for 1 year to run as a Democrat. And I think the calculus he made to run as a Democrat was that, he would get exposure. I mean, ironically, the media basically ignored him. And when they started covering him, they started disparaging him. But I do agree with him that he probably would not have gotten the national attention that he got if he ran as an independent. However, he did have to sell his soul to the devil in order to do that, because you have to acknowledge that you will eventually endorse the nominee, which he did do. But my thing was that he just shouldn't have done it that early. He shouldn't have done it that early. And at the very least, we should have been able to fuck up that convention even more than we already did, you know?
Everyone sold their soul for Clinton, like that. Like Elizabeth Warren sold her soul for Clinton. Keith Ellison sold his soul for Clinton when they all got up on stage and pretended as though it was a fair primary. They all, like, at a certain point, they all leveraged their liberal progressive bona fides just so we could theoretically beat Trump, and she couldn't even close the deal. And so I'm salty about that.
Yeah,
I can only imagine how salty Elizabeth Warren is. It's one thing if you sell your soul and you get something out of it, but they threw away their soul for nothing. It's like at the end of the day, you didn't even sell your soul to beat Trump. And Elizabeth Warren's speech at the DNC was perhaps the most disgusting of all the speeches. She got up on that stage and said, "This system is rigged," and like, so you need to support the person who rigged it.
Yeah.
Like the gall of that one. And now she's sitting yelling at the head of Wells Fargo to try to shore up some public support. It's like, nah, people aren't going to forget that. People aren't going to forget that.
Can we talk, because we only have like a half an hour left? I'd love to talk about Trump and like with
and I see our chat's also mentioning some of the appointments that are being floated around. Apparently Sarah Palin's up for a few positions. We got Giuliani.
I mean, Cenk made a great point. I was watching his show earlier today. He was saying that he's appointing all these lobbyists, even though he told his people that he was going to get rid of the lobbyists. He's appointing all these lobbyists to his transition team, all these corporate executives. I mean, these guys from big oil and the hedge funds. And I mean, it's just going to be such a shitstorm. And the only positive thing that I can think coming out of this is that now we activists may have the Democratic Party on our side in terms of fighting him. Because we know if Clinton did all the same pro-corporate behavior, the Democrats would go right along with it, just like they did with Obama. But it's interesting because, they are being very respectful. And Cenk was saying, oh, they're now talking about him as Mr. Trump, and they're extending the olive branch, and they're saying, we want to work with you. And then they have Newt Gingrich, who is the one. He is credited with his Contract for America for blowing up the bipartisanship that used to exist in the Congress. He would not work with Democrats. And that is one of the reasons why we are in the situation that we are in today. So the thought of him coming back into Trump's inner circle is really, really frightening.
Charles Blow made the point on Don Lemon's show last night, and I think other people have made it since or before even. But we can't just, like, I understand extending the olive branch, but it would be irresponsible for us to not demand an apology for the some of the things that Trump has done. Like, it's okay for us. We can forgive him, but you have to ask for forgiveness. You don't just forgive for no reason. Like, if someone's unrepentant and like, to me, I feel like it's not going to be effective. Whether morally one should forgive in that situation or not may be irrelevant into whether people will forgive. Trump is there's going to be a lot of angry people if people just go ahead and sign on to Trump, and we just pretend like all of the things that he said weren't like not just campaign ending but career ending type things that he was saying and doing. That we're going to allow him to be the president and pretend that that's an acceptable state of behavior in America. That lends credence to the points of the people that are worried about people snatching off and burning churches and all that good jazz. But go ahead.
But see, they weren't career ending. You know why they weren't career ending? Because the Democrats never really fought the premises of what he was saying. The Democrats never really had a stance, a hard line in the sand of anti-racism or anti-Islamophobia or anti-sexism, and that's why he was able to convince people that his racism and sexism were not particularly damaging because they throw around that word like it means nothing, and then they engage in similar behavior. How can you make a compelling argument against Trump's sexism when you're married to Bill Clinton? And I mean, that's not to say you should be judged for your husband's actions, but the optics of that. Come on, how can you make a compelling argument against Trump's racism when?
And it would be one thing if in the 90s she had been railing against Clinton, railing against her husband, saying, "I don't know if I can forgive him," all these types of things. But no, she went and attacked the women that were accusing him. So like,
when you're so responsible for racism in your own self, the Democratic Party has no answer to racism or sexism other than this very lazy very lazy social justice position where you can't say bad words because it hurts people's feelings.
Wait,
Yeah,
and I
it's
think
okay.
that Dare
It's
made
okay
the
if
point
you.
on Facebook, and like that's the other thing though, is that just that like if the idea is that what Trump said is going to be acceptable in America, and that people are going to basically take that one step further and think that they can get away with saying some of the things that he was saying or promoting the things, I'm not the one. Don't try me.
Most people,
Like, don't
are not. See,
like
here's the thing: most
don't
people
try.
are not so upset by language, and that's the problem the Democratic Party did not learn. While their version of racism and sexism at the highest levels is simply, well, I mean, I guess when you're making $100,000+ a year, yeah, the most damaging thing racism can really do to you is have someone call you the N word, or have someone call you a bitch, and then, oh my gosh, they're sexist. It's like, but for most people, language doesn't mean that much, dude. It's like for most people, being called the N-word is not the worst manifestation of racism in their life. For most women, being called a cunt, sorry, is not, if I said it, is not the worst manifestation of sexism in their life. And it's hard for people in the media to understand that because some people look deeper than surface level rhetoric. Like for a lot of, and when we talk about why the liberal establishment is so willing to forgive Trump, because this was a game for them. It's like they did a lot of the fear mongering surrounding Trump by the liberal establishment was simply a game because at the end of the day, this has no real effect on their life. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was a big game.
And you mentioned it earlier, is the fundamental part of like if we can't give Donald Trump, if several people said we can't give Donald Trump the nuclear codes, then why are you doing it?
because at the end of the day they'll be safe in the no, but they won't be safe in the event of a nuclear holocaust. But they know there's no one being a nuclear holocaust. And I'm in the middle here. See, I'm not a big fan of all of these protests against Donald Trump being elected. I'm not. Like I think that's tacky kind of. Like I hate to say it, I think that, you know, if you can't accept the parameters of what the system can deliver, perhaps you should have been fighting against the system prior to what it delivered. Like the problems that occurred during this election, the Electoral College being able to elect them without popular vote, they've been around for almost 16 years, no, forever, really. The disenfranchisement of voters in North Carolina and Ohio, that's been going on since the primary. These are problems that could have been solved, but they only became problems when they didn't deliver the outcome you wanted. And so for all these people, and for these same people, how many of them were actually fighting against the structural causes of sexism and racism? Pretty much none of them.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to.
Get in here,
I'm sorry,
Lauren,
this one thing. If you weren't prepared to protest Clinton's victory, if you weren't prepared to protest the outcome of this election, regardless of who won, you should go home. Go home, because then you're not in favor of democracy. You're in favor of having your choice and your life choices validated by a sham of an election.
Well, I just wanted to jump in on this protesting because I was contemplating going to it yesterday just to see what it was all about, you know, covering it. If Dave would have gone, I would have gone too. But then I noticed that in Los Angeles, it was organized, one of them, there were two of them, and they decided to merge. One of them was organized by the Answer Coalition, which is an anti-war group, and they organized 4 of them across the country. And one thing I know about Answer is they tried to co-opt the Black Lives Matter movement here in Los Angeles by glomming on to their protests because they saw that they were resonating with the people. And there was a lot of clashes between the organic Black Lives Matter activists and the Answer Coalition people, and not really learning how to be good allies. Then, of course, we saw a lot of stuff on social media yesterday about George Soros. You know, there was all these signs, they were busing people in, chartering buses to these protests. Is George Soros behind it? I don't know if these rumors originated from, you know, Trump people, because George Soros to them is the big boogeyman because he gave Clinton a lot of money. But
well, I know the first account that was associated to it through Twitter was moveon.org. If you looked when the Trump protests the hashtag first started coming out, if you looked for an associated account, it came out of the one that was listed by Twitter was MoveOn. So I know that whether that has anything to do with whether he actually did do it, I think that was the source of a lot of the rumor. But go ahead, continue.
Well, yeah. So my feeling about it was I thought it was great to have a peaceful protest. I would never, condemn anybody for protesting whatever they want to protest. Although I do agree with Brandon that it would have been great if they had been, more active before in trying to work for Bernie Sanders to get elected so that we wouldn't have Trump. But the other thing that bothered me was when I saw them take the freeway. Because I have a problem when people take freeways. They did it with BLM, they did it with Occupy, and I understand the calculus behind it. They're saying we need to disrupt. In fact, yesterday when one of the mainstream media reporters was interviewing a protester, he said, we have to interrupt commerce. And I was thinking to myself, aside from some truck drivers, what kind of commerce is going on at 12 midnight? Most people are just trying to get home to their families. And maybe these are people that had to work 3 jobs and they've got to get up again at 5 a.m. to go to another job. And these people are just really making it bad for them and screwing up, and in turn, maybe affecting their own cause. I don't know. This is just my personal view. And I put this on my Facebook page. And a lot of my activist friends started quoting all these, activist theorists about how, it needs to be done and we have to disrupt things and blah, blah, blah. And one person even said, that I should be showing solidarity by not criticizing another activist tactic. And I'm like, come on, you're coming on my personal Facebook page and trying to use the word solidarity to shame me into censoring myself. I mean, that's ridiculous. This is what I really feel. And I'm going to say it.
No, I think I think that there's reasons for people to disagree, and I don't know if Brandon's going to go there. But one of the things that, as you said, it's your Facebook page, and that's your opportunity. And shaming you is not going to be an effective technique. I think one point that I just wanted to touch on to add to that is I think you have a point about the commerce thing late at night. If people are going to block freeways, they should probably do it before the workday and make sure that it's public and on the news so that anybody who gets stuck in that traffic basically gets a free pass for showing up late to work that day.
I mean,
you might be able to have a better overall impact, and what you're really going to do is hurt those corporations' bottom lines. That those people aren't going to be able to get to work, and that's going to actually enact that'll get more attention. Go ahead, Brandon.
I mean, how much are you really going to hurt the protest? How much are you going to hurt people who don't have paid days off from work is one thing, but whatever. Or who need to get home and take care of their family, or relieve their babysitter, or take medicine. I'm not really interested in arguing activist tactics. So from theory, I'll judge it based on individual what is done on individual merit. Because sometimes you need to block a bridge, sometimes you don't. It depends. Yeah. I'm not making blanket statements about it. Well, I will say I feel bad that we're not really talking about Trump's stance on any particular policy issue or Clinton's, but the real, honestly, this election was pretty much devoid of any kind of policy talk.
Yeah, we don't really know what Trump's actually going to do. He's still floating things, names are getting floated around. But for all we know, his he could bring anybody in and give any sort of rationalization. And I have some speculation on how that could happen. But go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
I mean, ultimately, I just want. So I said it earlier. And I said why I disagree with these protests, not disagree with them, but they're not to my taste. Is I want America to take its medicine. I want people to actually learn from this. I want America to say, you know what? I want the Democratic Party to say, you know what? This is what occurs when you close off all legitimate channels for grievances. You get Donald Trump. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to finish. It's like Stokely Carmichael said, or rather to paraphrase him. If you won't let people eat at the table, if you won't let people engage with you in open discourse, expect for them to flip that table over. And the only people who don't understand why someone might choose a brick candidate, choose a flip the table, want to burn down the house, is people who think that, the poor should suffer in silence.
Well, what I was going to say is I think it's interesting that you said that, because I could never say something like that, because then I would be speaking white privilege and I wouldn't be affected by any of Trump's policies. So I think it's interesting that you said that. But let me just, I want to.
I have no shame. I live up to my own expectations of myself. I'm a scumbag, and anyone who disagrees with me can feel free to call me a scumbag.
No,
I know what I am.
We have to have honest conversation here. Everybody needs to say
a scumbag with a PhD, Brandon.
We can't be censored.
I don't have the PhD yet. I got for my dissertation.
I wanted to talk about Move On, because I know a lot of people in the senior management level, if you will, of Move On, and they're very decent people, and talk about white liberals that are comfortable. What really pissed me off with them was that they did do an endorsement of their members, and their members chose Bernie, but then they never did jack shit for him except for a few memes and a couple of videos. Of course, when Hillary got the nomination, all of a sudden they were raising money to send thousands of organizers around the country for Hillary. And I was thinking to myself, why didn't you do that for Bernie? Similarly, Adam Green with his bold progressives, and I love to call him out, it's otherwise known as the Progressive Change Committee, he refused to do an endorsement, even though I messaged him several times, because he knew how his endorsement would turn out. And he knew that he wanted to be supporting Hillary. And the whole time he was referring to the Elizabeth Warren wing of the Democratic Party. The whole time Bernie was creating this huge movement across the country. He hardly gave Bernie any credit. And now you should see they're all sharing Rachel Maddow's post about how, all we have now is activism. We have to support our activism. Their activism was all done on behalf of Clinton. And the worst thing that I got today was from an organization that I actually like. It's called the Campaign for America's Future, Roger Hickey and Robert Borisage. They are a progressive think tank, and they really are a progressive think tank, unlike the Center for American Progress, which was started by John Podesta, and Neera Tanden, who is their president, was basically a Clinton advisor the whole time, as we now know. They sent out an email in bold letters, probably 24 or 30-point font, no quarter, exclamation point. This is Trump's plan for his first 100 days. Take away health insurance from 20 million Americans. Begin mass deportation of 11 million undocumented immigrants. Nominate a Supreme Court justice who will vote to end legal abortion. Pass new libel laws targeting critical journalists, as if Bush didn't do that. I mean, Obama didn't target journalists either with his whistleblower, journalists and whistleblowers. Enact national stop and frisk laws, prosecute and potentially jail Hillary Clinton. Okay, so right away they're leading with fear. They are leading with fear, showing that they learned nothing from the campaign. And then
fear is not going to work. Donald Trump winning this election is absolutely.
Wait a minute. Let me finish.
Finish your point.
Let me tell you where this is all going to. The peril cannot be exaggerated. Depression and despair are a luxury we cannot afford. We must organize and prepare to use all the meaningful tools of citizenship in the courts, the press, and when needed, the streets with massive civil disobedience. People's Action, that's the name of their new group, is up to this challenge. We have thousands of trained organizers in almost 40 states. We hope this election would turn out differently, but hope won't keep families together, defend earned benefits, and protect the institutions of our republic. We need your help. If you are tired, we understand. If you are disgusted, so are we, but we are not discouraged. Please make a generous contribution. So once again, the nonprofit industrial complex is asking for our money. If they really were concerned about citizen activists, they would be citizen activists. They wouldn't be being paid to, I mean, you see where I'm going with this. I just find it so frustrating.
But
and everybody,
really...
and they're going to, so what people are going to do, and this is the email that we got, this is the first email that I got like this. You're going to start seeing this on social media as well. People are going to start sending money. They're going to start sharing articles. You're going to get this clicktivism again in substitution for real activism. And it's going to be the whole cycle starting all over again. Wash, rinse, and repeat.
I mean, I would argue. I mean, can you really be an activist for the status quo? Can you really be an activist for Clinton? Is activism for the status quo? Can you really call that activism, or is that just not like fear of change?
No, that's not what they're asking for. They're not asking activism for Clinton. They're asking to protect.
Prior to the
all these things, by the way. No, I was saying that they should have been activists. They should have been sending organizers out for Bernie. That's what I was saying.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and I was saying, but ultimately,
this list of things. Just let me finish. This list of things, by the way, are things that he is not going to be able to do in his first 100 days. Every single one of those things may be impossible for him to do, not only in his first 100 days, but ever. So they are using fear right now. And I don't know what they should be using. I don't even know if they should be using anything. I mean, I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss
They
right now.
need-
The only positive thing I will say is Jeff Sessions, who I did not realize was part of Trump's inner circle until I saw him on the stage the other night. He has been a rock star fighting the TPP. He's been as good, if not better, than a lot of our Democratic champions. And the fact that he has been advising Trump and the fact that he is going to be possibly even on his cabinet makes me think that perhaps the TPP really is dead. So, I mean,
they're going to try during this lame duck, but it is it's a good point, and we are running up. We're just going to be ending real short or pretty soon. We like to give a few minutes for Ben to go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. So go ahead and get your last piece in here.
I will say this. I mean, I don't know what they should be doing. From my perspective, the Democratic establishment was not that afraid of Trump because Trump's victory was seemed reasonable to them before it happened. That's why they promoted him. That's why they wanted to promote him, or at least consider promoting him. That's why they suppressed the vote for Bernie Sanders. That's why they did all of these things. So I find it hard to become mobilized by them or like the remnants of whatever they're doing, the establishment, to get out and do anything, because this was an outcome. This was an outcome they were willing to. This was an outcome that was thought to be tenable for them versus the Bernie Sanders outcome. In terms of fear, we talked about this earlier. I'm tired of Sean King's Twitter feed. I'm tired of hearing about the children, because cowards hide behind children. Cowards hide behind children and rules. When it was time to be forceful, no one wanted to do it because they were afraid of Trump. Now they're still afraid of Trump and they don't know what to do. It's like, I'm so tired of the cowardice on the left. The left needs to be a little bit more. Need to have a little bit more backbone. The left needs to have a little bit less whiny, have a little bit more backbone when it comes to things like this. They believe their own hype. And at a certain point,
the left finally put their foot down, and it was for Hillary Clinton. That was the first time that they had any spine, and it was to back up Hillary Clinton. And I want to just get Lauren in here really quickly, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, I just want to say Occupy Inauguration. Go to Facebook. It's a group of organizers who are planning to be in Washington, D.C., and what they're hoping to create is the movement of movements, getting all the left to unite, whether it's the Socialist Alternative, the Working Families Party, the Green Party, and just individual activists to basically fight for our causes. And if we can't, the left is famously disunited. I mean, I found when I was just sharing information about the Bernie Sanders write-in campaign, I was excoriated by my friends who had flipped over to Jill Stein, calling me a hillbot, saying that I was going to elect Trump. I mean, they threw everything in the. These were friends of mine from the Bernie movement. I had to unfriend them. I said, I'll get back to you after the election. But, the slogan, the people united will never be defeated. Well, the people divided will always be defeated. So I'm a little hopeful about this Occupy inauguration, and I'm going to try to go myself. And I would encourage people to check it out on Facebook, see what you think, and let's see if we can get our act together, because we really have to now. This is like, great. Yeah.
I think that would be interesting. 30 seconds, Brandon, and then we'll say our goodbyes.
In closing, I'm going to be the one. I know, and this goes back to what Lauren Steiner said. Lauren said about white privilege. I'm going to be we have a lot of upper middle class white people talking about how bad they feel for minorities and Muslims and women and all of that. I'm going to be the person who says, I feel bad for working class white people now. Because not only are they going to suffer from neoliberal policies, not only are they going to suffer under Trump when they would have suffered under Clinton too, but they're going to be scapegoated. It's they're going to be the ones that the liberal establishment blames for this, regardless of what actually occurred. And the Democratic Party, the liberal establishment, they left working class white voters a long time ago, and they don't even bother to pander to them like they pander to minorities. They make them seem like the worst part of America. And I will say it again, and I'll say it to the end of the world. I would rather hang out with poor white people than I would rather hang out with rich white people. Because the first time I heard a white person say the N-word, it was someone in the upper middle class. It was an upper middle class white person. So, so in closing, I feel bad for the poor white people who are going to suffer under Trump, just like they would have suffered under Clinton.
And not only are they going to suffer, they're going to be totally betrayed, because he's not going to do anything that he said he was going to do for them.
Absolutely. And some of them didn't even vote for him, because a lot of people who voted for Trump were rich white people.
Mm-hmm. And so with that, I just want to, I think we had a great conversation. It's very important that I think a lot of people heard this. A lot of this was venting. I wish we would have been able to incorporate more from chat. but just want everybody, if you liked what you heard or you're interested in hearing more from us or hearing more about how Brandon's going to be feeling sorry for rural poor white folks, then make sure to subscribe to either the Benjamin Dixon channel or check us out at Project Sanity, and make sure to follow Progressive Army on Twitter. Our handles have been flashing across the screen during the show, so you go ahead and check us out there. Just thank you so much for your time and joining the conversation. We'll be posting a link in chat where you can find the Benjamin Dixon show, which will be following us shortly at the 9 o'clock hour. So thank you all. Good night and good luck. And
Good night. I love you, trailer trash.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lauren, for joining us as well. Thank you so much, by the way. And Brandon, you guys have a great night.
Peace out, everybody.
We'll see you
Good luck.
Are we off?